Welcome back. Labor introducing tougher new penalties for tax avoidance. This is in the wake of the PwC scandal. Joining me live is Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg. For more on this, who of course has a close eye on these things as chair of the Senate Economics Committee. What do you make of this 100-fold increase? It's about making sure the penalty is actually a deterrent, because otherwise they sort of go, white-collar crime, who cares?
Look, it's all very well and good to have civil and criminal penalties, but you've actually got to use them. And one of the problems we have is that our regulators don't enforce the law. They don't use these penalties that are available to them. And that's what we've found with the ASIC inquiry, is that ASIC has a whole bunch of civil and criminal penalties, but they don't use them.
So why not? I mean, they've also got more powers announced. Is it a cultural thing? Is it... I know in the US a lot of studies were done suggesting people wanted a job one day with the sort of companies they were policing.
It appears there are cultural problems. There doesn't appear to be the capability to bring a court case and then win it and then put someone in jail. I mean, we just don't see... what you don't see in Australia is white-collar criminals behind bars.
So we need to see that.
Well, you need to have proper deterrence. Otherwise, all these things just come and go. I mean...
So you wanted something more specific around jail time?
Well, I mean...
in what was announced here, rather than the bigger change was the fine?
Well, I mean, I want to see the regulators enforce our laws. I don't want to see ever higher statute books. I think it's silly to keep on putting on new laws when you're not enforcing the ones you've already got.
So the people, at these regulators are just not willing to do it? Do we need a clean out? How do you fix that?
I think there are massive cultural problems at the main regulator, at ASIC, and potentially the other regulators. There are a lot of regulators in relation to PwC, as you know, and they don't seem to have the willingness to go hard. And you know what? Sometimes you've got to be prepared to lose. I mean, you can't just go into a courtroom with a guarantee in your mind that you're going to win. You have to be prepared to lose.
So you think it's a top-down cultural element within these regulators? Partly they don't want to lose, and partly... Are you concerned people think, I might want a job there one day?
Look, I think there is some familiarity that happens from time to time, but we're doing a full Senate inquiry. We'll make some recommendations about the structure and operation of regulators by the end of the year.
What's the example of a white-collar crime where someone should end up behind bars?
Well, there are a whole bunch of insider trading allegations that have been made in relation to listed companies in the past 18 months to 2 years, where the allegations are well known to regulators. Regulators investigate and then they don't take any action.
What's an example, though, of where someone should end up behind bars in your view?
Well, I mean, there are examples that we have had submissions to the inquiry in relation to companies like Nuix. There are the allegations around the super fund executives front-running the market during the pandemic before valuations were made, and they personally traded and nothing happened. Those are just a couple of examples.
So you think in that situation we should be pursuing criminal action with jail terms?
I don't think white-collar criminals are afraid.
Okay. Greens are putting forward an idea to ban political donations for any company going through a tender process. Would that make sense?
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I mean, the point here is that the regulators have not enforced the law. The Labor Party is now protecting ASIC, and Labor is ensuring that all of ASIC's failures to enforce the law are being held in secret, and including a bunch of internal governance issues at the ASIC Commission. Labor is covering up.
Well, I understand that, and we've spoken about that. I'm just saying this separate idea where you separate, a donation from a company from a government's ability to award a contract. Would that make sense?
The point here is that we already have a lot of laws, but we don't enforce them. So I don't support linking those sort of things. I think we've got to be focused on actually...
You don't see an issue, though, with a company, say, donating $200,000 to either major party when they're making a decision on a contract and they win that contract?
Well, if there is that problem, we have the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Right, but how do you might not necessarily be able to link it. It's an incentive to give that contract, isn't it? If they're giving
companies are allowed to support democracy. I mean, the unions are the biggest donors to the Labor Party and sometimes the Greens. I mean, are we going to ban them?
No, but they're not running for government contracts.
Sure.
So that's a difference.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's not really how decisions are made. I mean, just because you make a donation doesn't mean you're going to get a government contract.
Yeah, but it's about the transparency and the look of it, right?
Yeah, well, it's all disclosed.
Well, not in real time.
But I don't think this is... I think this is
not in real time.
I think this is a cop-out. I mean, I think the reality is laws haven't been enforced. Let's make sure we get law enforcement right rather than play around with these sort of things.
All right, let's talk about voice referendum finally.
Sure.
Very vocal, the no campaign from the coalition. As a yes supporter, your latest contribution, or the most prominent one, was saying we should delay it. It's not really a ringing endorsement, is it?
Well, I think there's a problem with the product, and I don't think that it has enough support at the moment to get over the line.
Right, but just by saying that, that's kind of admitting defeat. It's not going to get delayed. You know that. Why not support it?
Well, the process that has led up to this has meant that there's a product that I don't think is going to be able to capture enough centre ground, and I think that's hugely regrettable. I mean, I don't know that it's in the country's interest to have a defeated referendum.
From Peter Dutton, he said, let's just take action, in these communities instead of a voice. It's been revealed today when he was in charge of the Safer Communities program, he opted to bypass recommendations to give money to some Indigenous community areas. What do you make of that?
I don't know about that, but I found him to be a very sincere and decent person. I think he genuinely has an interest in remote Indigenous communities, and I note that he spent a lot of time in these communities.
Well, and he has, and he went to one place in Arnhem Land and said, listen to their local voice. That's what they want. Listen to the changes.
Sure.
But this same town, or a town in this area, wanted $300,000 for CCTV cameras and lighting. The department said it was the 26th most worthy out of 211. In other words, it's worthy. But they didn't get it when he was minister. Isn't that him saying one thing and doing another?
I think he's very committed to supporting remote Indigenous communities, and he's shown in his political or non-political life a willingness to get his hands dirty and to support vulnerable people.
Except in that situation.
Well, I don't know all the details of that situation.
Okay. All right. We might talk about it with more particulars available next time. Andrew Bragg, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.